All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Big Ideas session here at NRF 2021. I'm Tom Litchford. I'm the global lead for the retail industry here at AWS. If you're not familiar with AWS, we're the leading cloud provider in retail, partnering with thousands of retailers around the world. We're driving innovation in the industry across three separate areas. The first is optimizing operations, and this is your classic enterprise migrations to the cloud, as well as IT modernization, as you see some of the innovative stuff we're doing with our customers in microservices, serverless environments. It's also around increasing insights, where we help our customers get better operational insights as well as better customer insights. And finally, we help our customers transform their engagement. And this is where we really start seeing retailers transform that customer experience, whether it's from the web channel, the mobile channel, or in physical stores, or even in the back end where we get better operational efficiencies in the supply chain. With that, I have Rajeev Aikkara with me from Burberry, who is the Vice President of Technology for Digital Marketing, for digital, for marketing, for customer, and for CMD. With that, Rajeev, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Nice to be here.
Why don't we start off with just telling us a little bit about yourself, your role, and a little bit about Burberry, although I'm sure everybody knows that brand.
I'm sure everybody knows about us. So I'll start with the brand itself. So Burberry, we are a luxury goods business who has a strong track record in innovation ever since we were founded by Thomas Burberry back in 1856. We are a global business and we believe strongly in the power of creativity. In my role, the simplest way to put this is I head up technology for our consumer engagement platforms. So that includes the digital assets like .com, apps, the underlying platforms like e-commerce, merchandising, order management, those kind of things, all our marketing technology, in-store clienteling, and all the technology that powers our creative expressions like the shows that we do in both seasons. And I've been there for around 3.5 years now.
All right, thanks. And thanks for partnering with us. Burberry's been a customer or partnering with AWS for several years now. And we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing with us in terms of technologies and how you're improving your digital transformation projects. But, maybe let's start with the elephant in the room. Obviously 2020 has been a year we want to see in our rearview mirror, or we've seen in our rearview mirror now. And we're hoping to get out of this pandemic. But, many companies are being impacted by those changes, especially in customer expectations this year. Can you maybe tell us a little bit what you see going on in the industry and maybe how that's impacted Burberry?
Yeah, I think the industry has been going through profound changes even before 2020. We are living in this era of consumer technology innovation at such a pace that perhaps is unprecedented in many ways. Ever since 2000, whether it is internet, whether it's in the mobile, and all the social media platforms and so on and so forth. The way I think about this is that you could see different patterns emerging from it. So one is obviously consumer-led. Expectations of customers are changing all the time. It's actually the bar is getting higher and higher all the time in terms of the elevated experience that they expect or the personalized experience that they expect. That's one element. The other element is that with technology changes, it also enables almost every aspect of business processes to be optimized for its good, for it to be more efficient and more agile and more nimble. And the final thing that comes with all these is the regulatory policies around the world are catching up with the technology changes. So all these are bringing us a different source of opportunity and different sorts of challenges along the way. And we cannot forget that most of the businesses, unless you are a greenfield startup, you also have a legacy suite of technologies and culture and processes and so on. So what we're seeing is how do we make sure that we are adapting to all these, making use of the technology innovations that is coming our way, making use of the power of the brand, our ability to tell the story of the brand, and to consistently get to that place where customers expect us to be, which is to provide them with that elevated, personalized experience. What you also see as a shift is, which, one thing that Burberry has been remarkable about is being pioneers in the space of digital. We've had the transactional website for a very long time. We've had done a lot of interesting things like shooting the show on a mobile phone. An iPhone was not just about released as an example. So in many ways, we were in a good place to be able to further accelerate that journey of customers using the digital channels to do more research about the product and services. We've also been trying to get all our stores or our physical channels well connected with our digital channels. And that point, the connection point, is our amazing client advisors who knows all about our products, our services, our customers. So we've been, all this year has been about making sure that we are empowering them and enabling them to do their bit at their best. All of them has put us in good stead.
So maybe from a technology perspective, what was your vision for how you address, not only the pandemic, but the challenges you were working on to start with, that physical and digital divide?
I think, the way I approach is, right, encourage teams to approach it, is to start with this angle of, it's one thing you can be sure of is you can't predict the future. You just can't know where things are going to go. So the number one aspect of that vision is to build, whether it's an architecture, whether it is a culture that is very agile and nimble in nature, which is driven by a drive for consistently delivering elevated experience for your customers, which is in turn means, which is driven by providing your colleagues the best tools for them to be able to serve customers really well. Quite often, a lot of companies make the mistake of having a great website, but then a marketeer has got an inferior solution to provide content in that website, as an example, or a store associate not having the right tool to clientele, as an example. So you've got to make sure that you are able to adapt. And part of that is making sure that all your team members have got all the right tools. And all that means is underlying all these is to be able to have a good stack of data and analytics that you could use really well to be able to serve the customer, to be able to serve your colleagues really well. So that's a kind of the top level view of that.
Right.
But we dive a bit deeper into that, because one interesting aspect here is, as I alluded to earlier, you always have a legacy that you're inheriting from previous years as well. And quite often they are suboptimal, because a lot of these technologies have evolved, as you know, over a period of time. And there'll be applications that are easy to change. There'll also be a lot of applications that are not that easy to change. And time and money are limited, right? So you're going to have to figure out, how do you balance your bets? How do you balance your bets of what do you use from your legacy? What do you go to the new? Where do you focus your build engineering capability? Where do you buy off the shelf, like software as a service vendors, those kind of stuff? Our approach to this is that we believe in owning the customer experience, the creativity that goes behind it, and so on and so forth. So all of our engineering expertise goes into building a great website, building great integration with out-of-the-box tools that we can bring from various SaaS vendors. So we have this approach of cloud first, API first approach towards picking these vendors, and we make sure that they are integrated well by us to provide a unique, differentiated experience to our customers, which then is localized depending upon markets like China or US, UK, and other important markets.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I want to dive in a little bit on that technology, but first, I love the comment how you started this around, you've got to get the culture right. And and I got to tell you, in the 3 years that I've been here at AWS, that's one of the most asked for discussions that we get is, how does AWS, how does Amazon retail innovate so fast. And really, it's not always, just because there's some technology sitting here. It's that culture that you have, that culture of experimentation. And I could just tell you, from my, years in retail, you could probably tell from my gray hair, I grew up in that culture where, IT was a cost. And if you screwed up something, you got fired. And I love the way you're going here, where IT has become more strategic. Can you maybe comment a little bit about that?
So, a lot of technology investments used to be like an IT contract, big 3-5 year type thing, whereas now it's changing to, thanks to cloud computing and other things, to much more shorter conversations. With the shorter
Exactly.
time, that means that as a group, you are allowed to take a bit more risks because none of them are going to kill you. You're going to make small mistakes. You're not going to make huge tens and hundreds of million mistakes, dollar or pound worth mistake. You're changing the magnitude of failures, allowing you to learn from it and scale the successes.
Exactly.
So I think that culture is of very collaborative, cross-functional, customer-obsessed, data-driven approach are likely to succeed more than departmental silos-based approach, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I love that customer obsessed. It's all about, it's almost, if you start mapping out these journeys and how customers are interacting with your brand, you can almost start seeing, okay, where am I causing friction in that interaction? And then you go attack that with technology. And it's that just constant focus on, making that experience for the customer. So I love that. Um, let's go on. I mean, you talked a little bit about, making sure you had a foundation in place to, from a technology perspective, to do that. So maybe talk a little bit about what was your approach for creating that foundation or that technology platform?
I think it starts with understanding which blocks are the ones where you can take least risk. As an example, you don't want to have too many failures in your checkout funnel. That's the place where your customer is ready to give you the money and your credit card processing failed or your fulfillment logic failed. That's an operational failure. That's a bad failure. You learn nothing from it. Right? That's just plain rubbish. There is another type where you are figuring out different UXs. You're figuring out how to tell the story about a particular product, like a trench coat, as an example. And there is a way to tell the story using images and videos. There's a different way to tell the story about a lot more user-generated content. They're both that the risk profile is very different. There, until you experiment a lot, you don't learn. So the foundation is to make sure that you're clear on this distinction. And the ones that are the operational things that you need to be robust, you have made sure that they are robust. They work really well. You have high quality telemetry around it. So if it fails, you can get through it much quicker than anything else. Whereas when it comes to a place where you can experiment or you need to experiment, you have made sure that you are allowed to do that in terms of both technology as well as culture, in terms of the right ways to ideate and the right ideas to go through all that. And where it becomes interesting is when you have a lot of legacy, right? Because you have to make a choice between do I spend all my budget into technology replatforming, which can take 2-3 years, and businesses can't wait for 2-3 years doing nothing, right? You have to do a lot of these things. So you have to coexist. So then it kind of becomes a bit like, which fit in, how do you protect your legacy? How do you open it up? Particularly a lot of the legacy tend to be quite monolithic, right? One big e-commerce engine that does everything, right? So how do you do that? So, my approach or our approach has been what we call like a facade type pattern. You create a facade, you kind of logically split it so that you can turn component by component. And it's not as straightforward or simple, but you get the idea. You can then take merchandising out, you can get customer identity, authentication out, the new tool in, etc., etc., etc. And that allows you to do that in different regions at different times, and so on. And that means, it's probably the only way you could transform technology.
Are there any, you called out serverless, you called out, I think you said microservices. So as a key, as we start looking at these monolithic applications, obviously there's significant cost savings to maybe just get those into the cloud, but then start decomposing them. What are some of the key technologies, aside from maybe those that you're looking at?
So what we have been trying to get our balance right is how micro do we go? Because we have to always remember that we are not an engineering company per se. Right? We are
Right.
So we are not in a position to be hiring tens of hundreds of engineers, right? So we have to be very careful about not overcomplicating things as well. Right? So microservices, sometimes I kind of feel like that's a bit too micro. And internally I use this term called macroservices. So if you, as an example, we cut this big e-commerce platform into 6 or 7 components. One component for commerce, one component for digital asset management, one component for merchandising, etc.
Yeah.
Use all of these at API first. I'll give you one example. For content management, we went with a technology called Content Stack, which is a API first content management tool rather than much traditional content management tool that does everything, right, end to end.
Right.
We want a content management tool where our marketeers can create content and publish. But then in terms of presenting that, we will own that logic so that we can be crafting that our way, because that's our craft, right? As Burberry, as a brand.
Right.
So we use that content stack in that example. For e-commerce, we went with another one called Commerce Tools, which is also another lightweight API first e-commerce engine. And again, when you then dive deeper, you recognize that commerce is one of our simpler problems. Commerce, like if you think comparing to Amazon, the volume is not the same. Therefore, or we don't do price changes. All that complexities that come into commerce doesn't really exist now. So what we need is a simple, straightforward, literally orchestration tool for that. So we chose that one.
Right.
Then all content, we're going for Node React web applications that we deploy in AWS. And then all of these backend platforms are available as APIs. And that's where we've taken a microservice approach where they're all Lambda functions, which in all these platforms out of the box. So we have kind of abstracted that with those Lambda functions in the AWS layer, which we have distributed globally.
Right. Have you also, keeping on that same theme, as you start, decomposing and doing these macro services, have you thought about channel agnostic and making sure, like as you're writing these commerce engines, that they don't really care what channel that customer is using?
100%. It's the pattern we call it is headless commerce, where in the sense that they are channel agnostic. The whole premise is new channels will keep emerging. Of course, web is a dominant role in the digital speak. So is app. But then, gaming, VR. In fact, when Instagram Commerce was launching, they chose us as a launch partner because we were one of the few retailers who were able to switch that quickly, because we had built these APIs to be able to integrate effortlessly in a matter of weeks rather than months and years. So yeah, totally device agnostic. There is a level of device consciousness, right? Because your app experience is slightly different, therefore you orchestrate it slightly differently. But all the services are at an atomic level are available to be consumed in any channel. And some of those could in fact be third parties as well, right? Whether it is Tmall or Farfetch, etc. So they're all choices that we make.
Right. And from a results perspective, are you seeing that gives you much more agility? So it's like you move these, next generation architecture into a serverless microservices type architecture. Are you seeing that it provides you, really good agility in terms of responding to what those customers' wants, needs, and desires are?
100%. If you look at the last 2 years, on one hand, we have been under the hood changing the platforms without people outside seeing it in terms of technology platforms. That's from legacy to new. At the same time, we have numerous new services were launched. For instance, a couple of years ago, we launched this monthly drop called BC. We rebranded the website experiences. We have we launched Instagram Commerce, as I said earlier. We've also done a number of things, like launched a game called Be Self, and launched a social retail concept store in partnership with Tencent in Shenzhen late last year. So these are all the things that we are doing whilst all the other things are happening on a regular basis as well. I just don't think all of these are possible if you do not decompose, if you do not create the right level of abstraction and right separation of different units, so that they can all be orchestrated to various business goals. And it also has allowed us to change the tack when a market needs it or demands it. All our O2O type thing, remote clienteling type thing, it's easy for us to spin out because underlying services are available to be used. It's just in a different, it's a store associate tool rather than a website directly for customers. But it's similar things. So there's some examples where how that allowed us to be nimble.
Right. Yeah, I love it. And I would love to actually just talk to you all day long about technology, how you did this. But at the end of the day, it's really about the customer and the business outcomes that we're seeing from applying that technology. So other than agility, can you maybe tell us a little bit about other results you're seeing from pursuing the business this way?
What I can say is that when we look at the services that we launched and how our customers engage with them, whether they are a website or the Tencent partnership with Shenzhen, the engagement rates are extremely encouraging. And then the other way to measure this is also, are you then getting more support to do more of this, which is also the case. So there are the two ways I would say to gain comfort from feeling confident that we are in the right direction.
Right. Great. And and it's easy to sit here and talk about, oh, we just got to decompose and we got to move to all these new architectures and get API models and foundation right. But it's not that easy. Maybe any lessons learned as you were going down this path?
Yeah, it's certainly not easy. The first thing is that you have, in my opinion, we can only do this when this is a collective mission. If it is seen as a IT problem of technology replatforming, it's going to be a lot more painful than it need to be. Intellectually, it is a tough problem to solve. Therefore, you do not need the organizational chaos to make it even more so. So creating that shared mission, which is what I think where we got it pretty much spot on, thanks to the partners in the business, that it is our collective mission. It is not my problem only. It is our collective mission, it's our collective challenge. It's a puzzle. So seeing it as a puzzle for the organization, I think is very, very important. The other thing, I touched upon this earlier, is that this concept of beginning and an end. And then that makes people have this illusion of time, thinking like it's only for a year and then they can come back and do other things. No, it's you want to be able to do this forever, so that you're able to make use of those amazing technology advancements that are happening. Because if you don't, your competitors will. If your competitors don't, some startup will. So someone will come and eat your piece if you're not on top of it. So that mindset of continuous transformation, and in that sense, transformation is a bit of an overused word, but continuous evolution is probably a better word in that context.
Right.
Really, really important. And the final thing is that we got to be honest about the fact that when we place our bets, when you place 10 bets, they're all bets, right? We can't predict the future. When you place those 10 bets, 2 or 3 will go wrong, and it's probably not a bad thing as long as you've contained the mistake, that the cost of that mistake, right? So I think they are the 3 things that I would call out. And of course, great people, great colleagues, beers and pizzas, they all help too.
All right. So what's next on your plate?
We're very excited about a couple of things, I would say in particular. One is storytelling, the new novel ways to tell story. So if you look at from our side, our ability to tell the story of a brand and our product is what differentiates us. I think technologies like VR, AR, gaming, they're all going to open up new possibilities. We played a lot with it last year, this year, and done a lot of AR enhanced campaigns in stores. Uh, Beautiful, beautiful campaigns. I think there'll be another level of that coming. I'm very, very excited about that. The second thing is this, what we call online to offline, which is connecting our store and our physical and digital channels through our amazing client advisors of our store associates. I think the way we approach that is quite novel and very different. And
Right.
very excited about how that's going to change our customer experience and how we scale. I think that'll be a big, big change in terms of how we utilize technology.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We've talked a little bit about, just the core migration. We've talked about, maybe the differentiation that AWS brings in partnering with you in terms of some of the work we've done with computer vision and voice and IoT, and you even mentioned AR, VR. What technology or advancements would you like to see? What would you like to see? In terms of innovation, where maybe AWS could just jump in and help you even more serve your customers better.
I think that we are not an engineering company, right? Whereas, like every consumer-facing company, we're going to have a great technology muscle, but we are not. We will not have the technology infrastructure, engineering resources as you guys have. So there's an element of continuing to make it easy for us to have as many out-of-the-box infrastructure things, whether it's like the serverless approach, the CloudWatch type telemetry approach, etc., so that we have very little to worry about on the common problems, right? Then we can focus on our specific differentiating challenges. I think there's more to be done on that space.
Yep.
Love to see more and more of that coming our way. And I'm sure there are many, many other things, and I could talk to you the whole day about these things.
Absolutely. So, Rajeev, I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today to talk a little bit about what you're doing. And I appreciate the partnership that Burberry has with AWS and really look forward to working with you on some of those future things that you would like us to help you with. Thank you so much.
We love the partnership, and we're looking forward to working on interesting things